Hey folks, Chris in Central Pennsylvania. For years we've watched as the African National Congress has tried to erase history. If you go to the Apartheid Museum in Soweto, you'll notice that every time you go there, if it's even still open, that more and more about the struggle is all about the ANC. Of course, the ANC played virtually no role in the freedom struggle after the Rivonia trial, when they were pretty much wiped out. After its leaders were in prison for terrorism and treason, the ANC had virtually no role in what happened. They like to take credit for 76 Soweto riots and 85. They did play a role in 85. But they're mostly responsible for the murder of thousands of Inkatha Freedom Party leaders, 25,000 of them in the 1980s and early 1990s for their necklacing campaign, their assassinations. That's the true history of the African National Congress, which they don't want you to know about. They cover that up. That isn't featured prominently at any place. Well, now they're even going back in rewriting history from decades ago, 6 decades ago. Chief Albert Luthuli died. Now, the official inquest claimed that he was struck by a train crossing train tracks and had head injuries and arm injuries. But Ronnie Lamola, the Minister of Injustice, one of the most incompetent members of the Ramaphosa regime, which is interesting. You know, there's a lot of incompetent members in that cabinet, but he's one of the most incompetent. Now, the foreign minister, and screwing up relations with the U.S. and elsewhere, he opened an inquest in April of 2024 into the death of Chief Albert Luthuli, which occurred back in 1967. So now the Pietermaritzburg High Court has declared the late ANC President General Chief Albert Luthuli was beaten to death by apartheid police and did not die after being struck by a goods train in 1967. Of course, they can't tell you who the special branch people are that murdered him. They can't tell you what the circumstances are. They don't produce any autopsies. They don't produce any evidence. What they do is they give what they call evidence presented by locomotive and simulation experts, as well as investigating officers 6 decades after the fact, said that there was no train accident. Really? You can determine there was no train accident on that day in 1967, 6 decades later. Now, I am not putting beyond the realm possibility that South Africa's special branch did murder the chief, but what's the motivation? By this point, he was no longer a factor with the ANC. He was really relegated to the dustbin of history at this stage, and there was no reason to take him out. So the conclusion is that Luthuli was killed by members of Special Branch in collusion with railway staff. There was a witness at the time, Mbebu Mayandu, but he's long since gone, disappeared. Whether the apartheid police killed him, or he disappeared, or he went and fled somewhere else, or he's died, no one knows. So without any evidence, they're now claiming that Chief Albert Luthuli was murdered. What is the purpose of this, other than to stroke racial hatred and cause chaos? And by the way, who murdered Brendan Horner? Who murdered Edward Neumeister? We still don't know. We still don't know. Years later. Why? Because they're focused on this. The man is dead.